This is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Yomi, all the learning for this month. The month of Elul has been generously sponsored as an incredible schos, Aliyas Nishama for us to raise Basra Meir B'siyata Dishmaya. The learning of the entire Chabura should bring Esther Rezel Basra Meir to higher in place in Gan Eden Shel Maila. We're holding on the bottom of Tezayin and Beis. We are 5 lines from the white lines, as the Gemara says, Gufa. Gufa, as we quote the text of the Brisa that we learned yesterday, and in classical Gemara sense, will delve a bit deeper. Says the Brisa, Elu ma'anikim lahem. The following get Hanaka being simply gifts, more particularly severance gifts. More particularly, even more, is when the Eved goes free, he gives gifts to take with him. The following cases get these gifts. Hayoytze b'shanim, and everything goes out with shanim, which is after 6 years. Ubi yovel, ube misas adain, or the death of the master. Ve'ama evriya b'simanim, or an ama evriya when she leaves, when she becomes a gedayla. Aval, however, b'yireach v'yoytze b'girayin kesef, if a person runs away, a b'yireach, or one who leaves b'girayin kesef, or one leaves with a depreciation of its value, as we've spoken, which means that the Eved pays the remainder of its value. What's the halacha? Ein ma'anikin loy. There is no gifts given. Rameir argues and he says, Rameir Aimer, Baireach ein ma'anikin loy. But v'yaytze b'grayin kesef, yes ma'anikin loy. Rav Shimon Aimer, Rav Shimon says, this was part of the Brisa that was quoted above, Arba manikim lahem. There are 4 categories that get gifts. Shloisha be'ish v'gimel be'isha v'yati yachaloy arba be'echan mehem. And there will never be 4 by any one of them. Why? L'vishein simanim be'ish u'ritzia be'isha. There's no simanim, there's no simani gadlus of an ish leaving as an eved, nor ritzia having a woman having her ear pierced. That is the Brisa. On that, asks the Gemara, Minani Mili, from where do we know these different halachas regarding Hanaka, different avadim that do and do not get these severance gifts? And the truth is, in the end of today, or the second half of today's show, we're going to deal with what is these gifts? What are these gifts? What exactly is given? Says the Gemara, Minani Mili. Titana Rabbanan, 4 lines from the bottom of Tezayin and Beis. Yachol lo yehu ma'anikim. You would think that there are no gifts. Ella liyayse b'sheish. Minayin the rabbis yayse b'yovel misas ha'adon v'ama avriya b'simanim. How do we know even to include one who leaves by yovel the death of the master and ama avriya b'simanim? Talmud loymar, we learn out from the pasuk of Tishal Chenu. Pasuk says Tishal Chenu. V'chi Tishal Chenu. From the 2 psukim, that's we learn out that there are gifts in all cases. So now I would think to even include a one who runs away or one who leaves the depreciation of their value. And from here we darshan, only one that is sent from you, which comes to exclude Yoitze Baireach, excludes one who runs away. The Yoitze B'girayin Kesef, one who leaves depreciation of the value, Shein Shilucha Mi'imach, who's not being sent away from you. So that's going to be the makar that only a Yoitze Yovel, Yoitze Misas Adan, or Amavriya B'simanim will get Hanaka, and not a Baireach, or one who's Yoitze B'girayin Kesef. Rameir Baireach Ein Manikin Loi. Why a different reason? Dein Shilucha Mi'imach. Aval, says Rameir Yoitze b'girayin kesef in the last line of Tezayin and Beis, Shashiluchay me'imach, which is indeed considered being sent from you, if he's considered sent from you, does get Hanaka. Asks the Gemara, 1 second, you just told me that a Baireach does not get Hanaka because it's not considered being sent from you. But ask the Gemara, Baireach Hashlama Bai. There's a unique halacha that when a slave runs away, he doesn't just go free. The halacha is he has to actually complete the remainder of his term. Where do we see this? The Tanya we learned in a Brisa. Minayin lebayreach. Shechayiv lahashlim, for where do we see that a Bayrech, one that runs away, has to complete the remainder of his 6 years? Talmud Laimar, says the Torah, Sheish shanim ya'avoid. He has to serve for the remainder of the 6 years. Continues the Bryce as we turn over to Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Yachol, I would have thought, afilu chala, even if the Eved becomes sick within the 6 years, maybe also has to complete the remainder of his term. Talmud Loimar, says the Torah, ubashviyas yatsa. Then no, even if he didn't serve the full 6 years, he leaves on year number 7. So asks the Gemara, why are we considering a Bayreach, one who is not Misha Shiluchai Be'imach, it's not being sent away, if the Bayreach has to complete his term? And after the Bayreach completes his term, what is going to happen? He's going to be sent away. So the Bayreach should be the same case as a regular Eved. And ask the Gemara, there should be a regular din of Hanaka. Kasha on Rameir. Amar Rav Sheishes, Hachav Mayaskinon, Konshe Barach, Upaga Bayovel. The case is a unique one. Generally, you're right, says Rav Sheishes. If we have a Bayreach, the halacha is he does have to make up his time. But what happens if he runs away and boom, Yovel comes? Ma'u the tema, I would have thought 3 lines down, Yizayim at Aleph, Hayel va'afik le Yovel. Since Yovel comes, Shalucha me'imal karina bey, maybe it is considered being sent from you, v'loy niknesei, and he should not get a kanas, v'nanik lei, and therefore he should get Hanukkah, he should get the gifts. Kamash malan, then no, even though he leaves due to Yovel, and the reason he's leaving is not simply due to the Bayreach that he ran away, still there's no din of Hanukkah, there's no din that this Eved gets the severance gifts. And that's going to be the Makar for a mayor, whom we see at the bottom of the previous Amid, that a Bayreach does not get, but a Yotzei B'Girayin Kesef would get, and the difference being whether we consider it to be a Shiluchai Me'imach or not. Amar Mar, now the Gemara goes a little bit deeper, 5 lines down, into the Brisa that we just quoted. We just quoted a Brisa at the top line, Yachlafilu Chala. Even if Eved gets sick, you would think he has to finish his turn. Tambalei Marabashviyas Yatsa. Asks the Gemara, Afilu Kala Kol Sheish. Is this true that even if he's sick for all 6 years, he does not have to work anymore? But that's not true. V'atanya, we learned in the Brisa. Chalash shalish avet shalish einay chayiv lahash. If he worked for 3 and was sick for 3, then it's true. He doesn't have to make up the remaining time. But chala kol sheish, if he was sick for all 6 years, then what? Chayiv lahashlim. He has to make up the remaining time. So are you telling me that Ubashviyas Yatza teaches me that he does not? Answers the Gemara, Amar Rav Sheishes. The case he's referring to that even though he was sick, he was still able to work in some capacity. It's a Raisem Maise Machat. Because you're dealing with an Eved that does needlework, an Eved that does minor work, and therefore even though he is sick, he's able to continue working at some level. Asks the Gemara, the classical Kasha, Gufa Kasha, the Brisa itself is a stira, as a contradiction within the implications of the Brisa. Amrid, first it said, if it works for 3 years, then it's sick for 3 years. Ein chayiv la'ashlim, you don't have to make up the remaining time, which the obvious implication is, ha'arba, that if you worked for 4 years, if he was sick for 4 years, chayiv lahashlim, he would have to make it up. But then says the Seifa, chala kol sheish, if he's sick for all 6 years, chayiv lahashlim. The obvious implication being less than 6 years, chayiv lahashlim. Answers the Gemara, which is also the classical teretz, hachi kamar, this is the way you have to learn the Brisa. Chala dalit, if he's sick for 4 years, then Nasa kimi shechala kol sheish, we make it as if he was considered sick for all 6 years, and v'chayiv lehashlim. And that's part 1 of today's shir, dealing with the nuances of Hanukkah, of a bayreach, of an Eved that runs away. Tanu Rabbanan, we're about 13 lines down in the 2 dots, and as we mentioned, we're now going to deal with what is the din of Hanukkah, how much, what are the gifts that have to be given. Kama ma'anikim lahem, what are the gifts that are given to the Eved, the servant, when he leaves. Says the Brisa, 3 opinions. Opinion number 1, Chamesh Slayim Mikomin V'min. 5 Slayim of each min, as we'll see in a moment. The 3 minim are, the Pasuk says, Gairin, Soin, and Yaakov. Soin, Gairin, and Yaakov. Shehein Chamisha Say Slayim Divri. Rav Meir says that's 15 Slayim worth you have to give the Eved. Rav Yehuda Omer, opinion number 2, Shloishim. You have to give him 30 kesef work. Shleishim kishleishim shalaved, like the 30 that one pays if his shar damages an eved. Rav Shimon Aimer, opinion number 3, chamishim. You have to pay 50 kichamishim shabarachim, like the value of a person, which is 50 kesef. 3 opinions as to how much has to be given as the din of hanaka to the servant when he departs. Amar Mar asks, says the Gemara, let's go a bit into the previous brayso. Asks the Gemara, V'Rameir, Minyana / what? Rameir is just coming to teach me how to count? 5 slayim of each min. And since there are 3 minim, Rameir is telling me that 5 times 3 is 15. What exactly? There's obviously something deeper within the words of Rameir. Explains the Gemara, Hakamash Lan, you know what Rameir is coming to teach me? Mivsaru Deloi Batsir Lei. Says Rameir that you don't give less than that amount. You don't give less than 15 slayim. But Batsir Lei Mechad Mina, if you give less from 1 min, Vitzfela Mechad Mina, less Lan Pa. By giving us the total of 15, Rameir is teaching us that has to be the total. And that total is comprised of 3 items. If you give less than 1, then you can give more of the other as long as the total is going to be 15. Continues the Gemara, so now my time with the Rameir, where does Rameir get this Chamesh Slayim from each? Says the Gemara, Yalav Reikam Yibachar. Ma'alahalam, the din of Bachar is you have to give Chamesh Slayim. Afkan over here, it says the same word, Reikim Chamesh Slayim. Asks the Gemara of Ima Chamesh Slayim Mikulu, maybe it means 5 slayim in total. How do you know it means 5 from each item? Explains the Gemara, Iksiv Reikam Lebesayif. If it said Reikam at the end of the pasuk, it would have been like you said 5 in total. But Asha Dechsev Reikam Bereisha, Shadai Reikam Atzayin, Reikam Agayren, Reikam Ayakev. And therefore we learn out that it's Reikam of the tzayin, of the sheep, of the gairin, of the granary, and of the yakev, and of the wine. And that is how Rameir learns the 15. That is the amount that one gives to Eved. Asks the Gemara, wait, if you're learning from the word Reikam, V'neilaf, Reikam, Me'oiles Riyah, maybe we should learn from a different word Reikam, from the carbon Eilabai, the Shal Shigalim. Amar Krashe Bracha Shem Lekecha. Says the Gemara, no, the pasuk says that which has been blessed to you. So therefore we learn that we equate it to the Chamesh Slayim of the opinion of Ben and not of the Eiles Riyah. That is the opinion of Rameir. Opinion number 2 is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, Imer Shleishim Kishleishish Alev, in my time of the Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, Yalav Nisina may have it. Ma'alahala, and it says Nisina Shleishim. Afkan, it says Nisina Shleishim. Says the Gemara, 1 second, V'neilav Nisina may erchen. Ma'ala Chamishim, Afkan Chamishim. Why don't we say that just like by the Erech, the value of a person is 50, it should be 50 as well? Which basically is the Kasha, as we're going to figure out right now. We have 3 opinions with Rameir, Rav Yehuda, and Rav Shimon. Now this is going to bring out the Machlekes in Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon. Rav Yehuda is saying 30, Rav Shimon saying 50. Answers the Gemara fundamental teretz. If we ever have a choice, do you grab a lot, you grab a little, you cite in Shas, you don't grab a lot. So therefore it's going to be 30. Tafasta muat, tafasta you grab a little bit. Va'oid, number 2, we rather learn Nisina, Evid may Evid, Havli Lamelaf. It makes more sense, says Rabbi Yehuda. Let's learn out from the pasuk of Evid, and that's the pasuk of an Evid being gored. That's Rabbi Yehuda gets the Makar being 30. Shita number 3, Rav Shimon, 8 lines from the wide lines. Rav Shimon, Aimer Chamishim, Ki Chamishim Sheb Erchen, like the 50 of Erchen. My time, dear Rav Shimon. Where did Rav Shimon get this din from? Answers the Gemara, Gamar Nisina Me'erchem. We learn out from the word Nisina. Malal Chamishim. This should sound familiar. Afkan Chamishim. Ask the Gemara, wait. How do you know it means the highest value of Erechin, which is 50, which is less? Answers Mar Shebarach Hashem L'Kech Ksif. You always want it to be more. 1 second. Why did Rav Shimon hold like Rav Yehuda? It should be 30. Malal Shleishim Afkan Shleishim. Answers the Gemara, Chad Tefasta Meruba Loi Tefasta. Actually, this is part of the Kasha. Why don't we say 30? Because number one, Chad Tefasta Meruba Loi Tefasta Void Evid Mevid Avle Lemelach. Answers the Gemara in the last narrow line. Rav Shimon, Micha Gamar, different Gzeira Shava. And says the Gemara Bishlam, the Rameyan is if Segar and Biyakif. So now, we have 3 Shitas, we have 3 Mekayr. It's according to Rameir that it's 15.5 of each item. I understand why the Torah lists the 3 items, Segar and Biyakif. El Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon, that is 30 and 50. Hi, Segar and Biyakif Lamali. Why do we need the Pasuk to teach us the type of item to give? Answers the Gemara, we need it for the following Brisa. I would think those are the only items that you give: sheep, grain, and wine. Menayim, the rabbi is called Davar. How do we know to include anything? Hashem Elokecha. Asked the Brisa. So why does it single out these 3? To teach him, these are all items that produce. What does that come to exclude? Yatsu ksafim. It comes to exclude cash that does not produce. Different Rabbi Shimon. Rav Lazar ben Yaakov Aimer Yatsu paradise comes to exclude mules which do not produce. For Rav Shimon paradise mishvachan begufayu. At some level do reproduce, that their bodies themselves produce the shearings and whatnot. For Lazar ben Yaakov ksafim also produce at some level. Avle Yiska could do business. And we conclude this portion of the Gemara saying Usrich. Because of Gair Nava Amina Gduli Karka, now which goes to the ground, but not Valachayim Loi, because Rachman Atzayin. Yakev Lamali, so why does the boss say Yakev wine vats? As we turn over to Yedzayinim at Beis, Lemar, according to Rav Shimon, Lemu'ute Ksafim, that excludes cash. Lemar, according to Rav Lazar ben Yaakov, Lemu'ute Pradais. So those are the 3 shitas in how much the Hanaka is, and those are the different various reasons why the Torah listed Sayin, Gairen, and Yaakov. And with that, we're holding on the second line of Yudzayin Amud Beis, and the Gemara quotes a Brisa. Tanu Rabbanon Hashem Yirach Hashem Elokecha. Says the pasuk that Hashem has blessed you. Yach, I would think. Nisbarich bayis big luloi manikim loy lebarich lo nisbarich bayis big luloi ein manikim loy. I would think that the whole din, this whole yesod, this whole obligation of Hanaka to give the Eved severance gifts is only if the house was blessed on account of the Eved. Ta'amalai marhanik tanik mikol makam, you always give the gifts. Im kema talma sheberacha, I supposed to say sheberacha. Hakol lefi bracha ten loy, it's teaching us that you should give more if you got more bracha from this Eved. Rav Lazar ben Azariah Omer Dvarim Kichsava. No, the simple reading of the pasuk says Rav Lazar ben Azariah. Nisbarich bayis biglo loy manikim loy. Loy nisbarich bayis biglo in manikim loy. Came out of Tanik. According to Rav Lazar ben Azariah, Dibra Torah Klash Bnei Adam, that just the way people speak, they speak in double words, but it is no extra word for a drasha. Tanu Rabbanon continues the Gemara, 10 lines from the top of Yudzayin Amud Beis. The 2 dots. Eved ivri oived es haben ve'enoi oived es habas. An Eved ivri serves the son, but does not serve the daughter. Ama ivriya, eno eved is loyes haben v'loyes habas. Hanirtza, which is an Eved, of course, we spoke about many times, it had his ear pierced. Hanirtza, v'hanimkar la'akam, or a Jew that is sold to a guy. Eno oived loyes haben v'loyes habas. So that's our Brisa, discussing how far does the servitude go? Does it transfer to the children as well? And now, as we just did and as we always do, the Gemara will delve into each part of this Brisa. Amar Mar, says the Brisa. Eved ivri oived es haben ve'eno oived es habas. Menon, immediately, where do we know this from? Titanu Rabbanan, says the Torah. Va'avdecha sheish shanim. And it shall work for you, v'avdecha sheishanim. And from here we darshan alacha v'lo l'yaresh for you and not to your inheritor. You're saying but 1 second. Maybe it means just not the son, but other Yarshim, yes. When the Pasuk says that the Eved should work for 6 years, which implies that it's 6 years full of work, even if the master is no longer, but the service continues to the heirs. Hare leben Amr. Hamani makayim v'avlecha sheishanim. Lacha v'loi le'yirish. What do we come to learn now? Just you and not the Yarshim. So the son is included. The son is included, but not the other Yarshim, not the Bas, not the brother. Ask the Gemara, how do you know? We know that there's one inclusion pasuk, one excluding pasuk. So how do you know to include the son and exclude the brother? Explains the Gemara, the son takes over for the father with regarding to the din of yiyud, which is to marry off one's daughter, which over here would mean to marry off the sister. And as well, ste'achuza is an ancestral field, a field that's within the family. The son has the rights to redeem it and buy it back. So that's why the son comes first. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Wait, maybe the brother takes precedent, because the brother takes over the father with regard to Ibam. Explains the Gemara, Klum yesh Ibam, El Makoshein Ben. It's a catch-22. There's only Ibam when there's no Ben. So the Yesh Ben and Yibam. In the case there is a Ben, there's no Yibam. So therefore, clearly, the son makes more sense to be Marba. Says the Gemara 1 second. It sounds like the only case is going to be when there is because we have the pircha from Yibam. If not for this final reason, I would have thought adif. Says the Gemara, what's your havamina? Typically, the hachatarti v'achasachada. Why don't we just say that there are two ways that the son comes over the father, takes over for the father with regard to Yibum and Steachuza, and the brother comes from Yibum? Meaning the Gemara is asking, what was your havamina? The son should clearly win because he takes over 2 times. Answers the Gemara, Steachuza nami ma'ai pircha utika nafkale. Steachuza's gufa learned out from here. Letana klum yeshiva ma'ala makab she'ein ben. And that's the reason why we fall onto that reasoning, and that's why we're marba as a ben and rohaitzi, and we exclude the ach. Continues the Gemara about 8 lines from the white lines, the 2 dots, Amma Ivriya, the second part of the Braisa. Eino evadas loyas aben v'loyas habas. Asks the Gemara, Menahani Mili, Amar Rav Pida, the Amar Cross says the Pasik, Va'af la moscha tasekein. Says the Pasik, and to your Amma, to the maidservant, you should do the same. Hekesha Kosav Liniertze puts the 2 together. Maniertze in Ovid Lois Aben V'Lois Abbas. Avama Evriya in Ovid is Lois Aben V'Lois Abbas. Asks the Gemara 1 second, Vahai, Lamosla Tasakein Lachi, that's what you need this pasuk for. Mi Baile, we need it for something else. Lechdetanya, the Brisa says, Vav Lamosla Tasakein, we learn out from here. Moving over to the first white line of Yud Zayin Beis. Lahanik, Lamosla Tasakein Lahanik. This is where we learn out this din of Hanakam to the Amma Ivriya. How do you know which one? So says the Gemara, so we don't have a pasuk to teach us our din. Our din, that when it comes to the Amma, doesn't serve Lois Haben, Lois Habas. Answers the Gemara, my tas kain. Shemas mina tarti, we learn out 2 dinim. And we continue on the 4th white line, quoting the Braisa that Hanirtzav Hanimkar La'akom Eino Yoived Lo Yesaben V'Lo Yesabas. Explains the Gemara, where do we know this from? Nirtza we know from the Chsev Ratza Adeinev Aznoi Bimartseya V'Avdoi Lo Ilah. And you serve him, you serve the master forever. And from here we learn out, him you serve. Now Nimkar la'akum minayin, and now the final din of the brayso. Where do we see that if an eved is sold to a guy, there's no din? Where do we know this din of nimkar li'akum that he does not serve the descendants? Amar Chizki, Amar Krav, Achishav im kaineu, says the pasuk, you should calculate with the master. So clearly im kaineu, v'loim yarsha kaineu, not with the yarsha. Amar Rava. This really is a new thing. We're just going to begin the statements of Rava. Tvar Taira Akum Yairish is Avad a guy inherits his father's never Chishav im kaineu, v'loim yarsha kaineu. Mechlal, from here we see this le'yarsha, that even Goyim have some level of father, and so we see that Akum inherits the father. Din number 1 of Rava. Din number 2 of Rava. Ger es Akum einoi. Din number 2, that a ger does not inherit his father. Loi einoi midivrei Torah, elo midivrei sefer. Midaraisa, ger does not ever inherit his father, but midrabanan he does. Ditanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Ger va'akum sheyarshu es aviem. A ger and an akum that inherit their father. Ger yachal loymar la'akum. The ger can tell his brother, because again, he converted his brother, did not, so he can tell his brother, Talatav is chavim anima ois. You take the idols and I'll take the cash. Talata yayin esach, you take the forbidden wines, v'ani peiros, and I'll take the fruit. And mishabayu l'rshus ger, also, once it comes into the rshus of the ger, it's going to be forbidden. If you can tell me it's a din deraisa, ki lo bayu l'rshus oinami, ki shakal chlufe akamu dika shakal. If he gets them on a deraisa level, then it should always be considered as if he's taking them in exchange for the avodah zarah, and therefore it should always be aser. Ella must be that the ger only inherits the father midrabanan. Kizeri David Rabbanan Shemiyasel Esurai. We don't want a ger to have second thoughts about his geros, so therefore we make him midrabanan inherit his father. Tanya Nami Hachi. We learned the same thing in a brayso. Medvar Mamurim Kishayirshai. Aser, then it's going to be aser. We'll stop over here. We'll pick it up 4 lines to the bottom of the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.